Yeah, they're only $30. But they last a lot longer when you don't spill coffee on them. Oh, I made a mess. It's soaking, I'm hoping. But some of you know me. I got a backup. Okay, management. There's a couple of things in management that normally I bash management. But let me tell you from a shop guy's perspective, especially a road guy's perspective, what I expect and what I think would be the best in the position. Now, this is obviously for you people in the upper echelon, what you're looking for in a manager and part. But the other part is it's going to kind of be two-phase, and I may end up doing a second video of it, but I'm going to try and do both together. What you should be hiring, and once you're in the position, what you should be. And you say, well, wait a minute, why? No, you're right. That's correct. For some of you, it's good job. You get a good doobie point for today. I say that because half the places I have been in, it's been nothing but romper room. Okay? There's my big bash. I mean, literally. People running around, running scared, helter-skelter. The top trying to protect themselves from the customer, and the guy down here trying to protect himself from the customer and the boss. That's a headache that nobody needs in the general management position of service manager. Branch manager, I flippin' don't care. I haven't seen a one yet that's been worth a hoot. Seriously. Well, Albany and Rochester weren't too bad. It was great in Olean. They didn't have one. That's an Anderson. 5-star. Good Lord, they'd have been better off if they'd have fired the guy and buried him up to his neck and left him in a cow pasture. That guy was a piece of work. Lying, cheating, two-faced. I only partially understand why the surface rider at the time was a flippin' jackass. A, he was hired to be, and B, that service man or the branch manager made him that. Now, you want me to get into the meat. The meat I want to get into today is simple because we are on a live, and one thing I'm going to go for here is, let's start the two phases. What should you be looking for? You're the company coming in to hire a guy, and you're going to say, well, we know what we're looking for. Yeah, I know what you think you're looking for. I'm telling you what we look for down here. Okay? I was road guy and shop guy. Been in those positions since 1980. Okay, does that give you an idea? Been around a long time. You've never been on your own to... Oh, no, wait a minute. I had an employee for a short time who was supposed to act like a partner, and I got shafted by him. So I know what you're going through. I had 12 references. 12! He came with a list. I called 10 of them, and only one. The other two I couldn't get a hold of. Only one had any complaint. He was the only one that was correct. So I understand what you're saying there. It's a crapshoot. In fact, a lot of you in management above, middle management and above, you don't even bother to make all the calls. They got references. That's pretty good. You call just to see if the references are even legit. That's about all you can do. I get that. Why? If you don't mind, I'm going to put this to you in what you would call a politically religious way. Mm-hmm. When you take 10 commandments and prayer and other things out of schools, guess what you're left with? No moral teaching. So if there is no moral teaching, guess what you get left with? People that have no moral values. They'll lie to you. They'll give you poor references, false references, and whatever, and that's what you're left with. So, society's not our concern. What you do at home and how you vote and work at home is a complete reference on what you're doing at work. You say, I can't. No, you can't directly, but you and the people around you, you control the type of person that comes in here to a certain extent. You and the older populace that are looking to retire, you in particular, are the ones that make the biggest change for the people that are coming in on the bottom, because you go home with all that experience and you just tend to sit back in the chair or go fishing and ignore what's happening around you instead of talking to people that you know in your family and other places to create better people. Your grandchildren, grandnieces, nephews, etc. They're the people that are going to be hired here. They affect us when we're in the field. I ain't in the field no more. 64. I decide what I work on most of the time. Because once you start a job, you got to finish it. So what are you looking for in the shop? I just told you, somebody with decent moral character. Well, where are you going to get that list from? References don't help, do they? No. Even in the biblical sense, it says, among 2 or 3 witnesses, the fact shall be established. Not anymore. In the Lord's world, with godly people, it was. At least moral people. And that's the way our system worked in the United States. So that's why I keep coming back to the circular thing all the time. That it's important. You're trying to hire somebody and you're going to sit there, there's DEI and there's all this, and we have to be moralists. No, you don't. No, you don't. Sit down beforehand. Even if you have to write it in a totally secular manner, you have to write down the type of character you're looking for to come into that position. You're looking for people that don't always articulate what they're thinking, but they're trying to get it out to you. You're looking for someone that speaks honestly. You're not looking for a great communicator. You're looking for a good communicator. What do I mean by that? A slick talker is slicking you 100% of the time. Okay? Now, another one that comes in is the technical talker. Well, that's something I can fall into easily. Is it something he falls into the technical naturally and drives you nuts? But you're going to get a work order writing out of him. And because of the technical that's here, you can understand what's going on in the shop in the field, even though they may not be, they have pretty hands, but they know what's going on. So somebody at least has been around the stuff. So now you've got moral character, good communication skills, not great, good technical skills. And on top of that, your problem is going to be one that always is a problem on our lower end organization. Excuse me. And it doesn't matter. That's going to be a failure no matter how it goes. The only thing you're going to be looking at, and I'll admit that freely from this end, you're going to have to do 2 things. And you aren't going to want to do one of them, but you're going to need to do it. One of them is your organization. If you got everything there, and this is a person without good organizational skills, but has the skill to organize because of moral character, speech, and technical prowess, then you need to train them. Don't say no and don't hire them. If you got 3 out of 4, take it. What? 3 out of 4, take it. Well, why do I say that? Because in the first place, you're going to have somebody with a moral character and the honesty to communicate reasonably, technical skill to know what's going on in the shop. Then when it comes up here to recording it and getting it for you to understand, you're going to teach them what you expect, but you have to understand how they're going to communicate it to you, because the words may be different, especially if they come from a whole nother discipline. Guy comes in from ag, like the jackass did over at 5-Star, and he couldn't change his ag talk to construction. He couldn't do it. And let me tell you, when logging, off-road stuff came in, that boy was lost out in the field someplace. He got dropped in the ryegrass and thought it was a rye grain. Yeah. Boy was lost. So he didn't have the moral values for honesty. He couldn't communicate to people. He was born a Yankee, raised in the South, and came back, and half his life was up here, the other half was down there. Supposedly was in the military, but did not act like it. So when it came to technical prowess, it was there, but he was too hot-headed to be able to use it properly. He was too busy arguing with people. So when it came to actually writing it down, it didn't matter that whether he had the skills to do it or not. The other 3 were total failures, so what came out here was BS. And it was so much BS that the BS branch manager didn't understand it. And that's how important those 4 principles are. And that's on your end up there in management. Now, on our end down here, we're out in the road. The first 3 are critical, deadly critical when we're out in the road. But there's a 4th one that's even more important. Because when information's coming from the top, you need them to listen, but you don't even know what the conversation is from here to here unless they can communicate it to you honestly. So those are the things that are important there. But down here, listening and not just hearing, listening, or depending on how you look at it, not just listening, hearing, whichever way you want to put it, which goes back to the moral value and honesty to communicate properly, because communication might be totally negative between the two. But if he has the skills to clarify, we're having a jargon difference here, not an actual difference of opinion. Then it goes back to the moral values, where the jackass isn't blowing up on a guy in the field because he doesn't or she doesn't understand. Because there's rare cases, like 1 in 10,000, 1 in a million, that you'll find a good woman that could do the job. There's only 2 genders. Remember that. I don't care what DEI says. Darwin says, so that these 3 affect drastically what's going on in the rest of it. Because the technical, you've got to be able to talk to the guy in the field. You have to have the honesty to be able to cover that. The technical can override the communication if suddenly you're talking in dimensions, specifications, and such. Then the communication part of it isn't quite so important. And you say, well, wait a minute. No, because you're talking numbers and procedures. Now you're talking what's in the book and in the manual. And quite often one's reading it to the other and back and forth. So that helps drastically. Now, another one that's going on with that is we've got the 3. You've got the moral values, communication skills, and the technical skills. But the other one is number 5 that's added to all of this list is training. Do not send your managers with any other training than with your techs. If they can get along in the shop and you know that, which goes to a 6th one that I'm coming to shortly, then they need to go with their tech, some of their techs, to a school to learn. 2 reasons. One of them is 99.999 ad infinitum that are hired for managers are hired on the white collar level. They know nothing. And the worst of it is, if you hire them out of the shop and off the road, hey, usually you've taken a good skilled employee and put in a higher position, and you think you're promoting them, but they've been trained down here. You didn't train them to come up here. It's usually just, there they are, and everybody leaves. That's a 100% in the last 45 years. You can take that to the bank, but you can also take it to whatever you want to mitigate it with in your world. But that's a true story. Either way, they're both failures. You say, no, wait a minute. No, you're right. We used to be able to do that in the past. But what happens is once you take the guy out of the shop, off the road, etc., move them up to that management position, the first one disappears because of the demands of people up there, and they know they're going to be pinch tighter, even though they're paid more. And they will do more to cheat themselves. Another one that's the worst. This will be number 7. I'm getting them out of order. You cannot give your managers bonuses for stuff that they save. Give them an award, expensive dinner, a quick little trip, but do not give them regular bonuses for saving money. In other words, they save the company $1,000. Woo! They get 100 out of it. Let me tell you, they'll find any way to save that $1,000, and they will 100% of the time undercut their employees and leave them hanging. That is a true story, 100% in 45 years. Never fails. In fact, that's been relatively recent in the last 15 to 20 years. And it's been continuous. Parts, service, wherever. Even in sales. The top sales guy, sales manager, will screw everybody under him to get that $100. So it's an occasional thing. Give them a dinner out, maybe a little vacation at the end of the year, something that's a one-shot deal, nothing that's continuous. And maybe all it is, well, you reach this level and here's a nice card and $50. Take the wife out to dinner. Here's a tank of gas and a, expense card to go get some gas until the card's used up. That type of thing. Keep it simple. Human nature will screw other humans. They will treat them like slaves. Simple as that. So on the bottom end, it's even more so. And that's why I say moral character is your number 1. They say, well, I don't want to get down to asking about the 10 Commandments or anything. Well, you don't have to. Start asking them about their parents and grandparents. What's going on? You say, that really, it does. It extends the interview. Yes, it does. If they're within your company and you're trying to move them, that just makes it a little harder because of gossip. But then again, if you're a responsible middle manager, oh man, look at that. It came back. You will also have the exact same stipulations, exact same parameters for you to meet as that one. And the first one is what? Moral character. So ask the questions. Find out if they tell little white lies now and then. Some of you will love that, and that's a failure on your part. I'll tell you one that was not a little white lie and how you can handle certain situations differently. Because I got praised for it, and I bailed somebody out of a huge lawsuit in a tractor that I worked on and caused the problem indirectly. We had a 2255 Oliver for a good customer up in Newport, New York. I went there to work on his PTO. Now, in an Oliver 2255, there's like a 6.5, 7-foot drive shaft that goes from the engine, direct drive coupling, all the way to the very back of the tractor to run the PTO hydraulics and the lubrication pump for the transmission. When I pulled that thing out, the bar was jingling around, and I didn't hear it completely. I said, that's a different jingle than normal, but nothing I can do about it. Why? Because what had actually happened was about 2 feet up inside the tractor from where the PTO was mounted, not even from where I was standing. So I'm pulling the shaft all the way out there, and I'm behind the tractor another 4 feet. So by the time this happened, there wasn't anything for me to hear. Got it all together, fired the tractor up, checked the PTO, all in good shape. Let me tell you, when you're in the field doing that PTO by yourself, that's a strain. You break it loose with a couple of dowels, stick your bars in there, lift that thing out, and lay it down on a hitch. Rework this, stick it back in, readjust the pressure. You're good to go. I couldn't even tell you what the pressure is now. I wouldn't dare at this point. But the thing is, what happened was a nut fell off the input shaft, the top shaft of the transmission. The back nut holding the bearing in. He backed the tractor out and went to shift it into gear, and it wouldn't go. And all of a sudden, it got locked in a low gear. It bent a shift fork while the nut was down there. What happened? You just did the PTO? No idea. Tore the tractor apart, and he calls in, and he says, what in the world caused it? And I said, well, the nut fell off the back of your input shaft of the tractor. So what do you mean? I said, there's no way of knowing, but you're fortunate. I said, why? I said, no one could have known. It happened at a particular point in time here. It was going to happen. There was no way to avoid it. However, if this didn't happen now, you would have destroyed your transmission later because it was the nut that held your top gear, the input gear of the transmission, behind the engine and over under hydraulic shift together. He says, so I said, yeah, so you've got a lot of work to replace a shift fork, maybe 2. And a few other gaskets and some stuff, and that's it. You're not buying a transmission or a housing or a bunch of shafts or, okay, I get the point. We'll tear apart what we need to fix the problem and then put her back together with new bearings on the upper shaft and make sure the nut is staked properly. He said, so I said, yeah. Strangely enough, it happened when I did the PTO, but at the same time, if it hadn't happened, it would have destroyed your entire transmission anyway. Wow. So you guys aren't going to take blame for it. So blame for what? Saving you at that time $5,000 to $10,000. All right. They gave him a break because it happened at that time. So there were 2 things that kept the customer there. And we never gave him the full information that pulling that shaft out caused that problem. Because that problem saved him. Beaucoup bucks. I said, well, you lied to him. I said, no, didn't tell him the entire story, but told him the honest story. If that had not happened at that point, his tractor would have been destroyed in the transmission. Possibly even more. Told him the story that he needed to have it fixed and be thankful that it did happen. He come back to me, he says, you guys aren't going to admit to anything. And I said, why? Saving your transmission again, I said, because he was in the shop. You guys, not going to admit you did it. I said, we didn't do that. It was done. And at some point, when everything was all over, he said, what happened? I said, nut fell off. It was on the PTO shaft. I pulled it out. The nut fell in. So you're saying, I said, yeah, I'm saying that because it happened, it saved your tractor. I still don't like it, but I'm thankful. And out the door he went. You handle things with the information, you give them accurately, and never, never lie to them. And just tell them it's a good thing something happened. Or other circumstances, maybe somebody rolled a seal putting a hydraulic cylinder together. Just flat out admit it. Don't lie to them. Tell the customer, hey, we had a problem putting it together. Rolled a seal. We have to get you another kit. Don't lie to them. But it's gonna, it's gonna happen anyway, because if they find out later on you lied to them, ooh. Every time I've seen that happen and the customer find out, it was worse. Sometimes in the farmer world, they didn't get sued because there wasn't enough money to sue them. And the company I worked for knew that and took advantage of it. You know how disgusting that was? Because later on they did get taken to court when there was enough money involved because they kept stacking it and didn't stop. Moral character. You're the company, you decide what the moral character is. I'm going to tell you right now without even fumbling around. There it is. Encyclopedia Jesus Christ, the Bible. I don't care if you're a Christian or not. Go in there and read that thing. You're going to convert me. Well, if I could, yeah, but some of you are too bullheaded. I'll never convert you, and I don't care to. But as far as societal operation and management, this is what we need, and we need to get it back into society itself to avoid the customers coming in trying to screw us, lie to us, cheat us, and sue us for nothing. To put you in management in a bad position where you're trying to play CYA, to put the middle guy in there so you can force the blame on him if it's possible for CYA, and then he does it and it goes right on down. Let me tell you, may not believe trickle-down theory in economy, but let me tell you, BS and diarrhea flow downhill from management. And if you handle it poor up here, middle's going to handle it even worse. And by the time it gets to the bottom, they'll end up a revolt sometime or other. That's a promise. If it doesn't end up in a revolt, you have a lot of unscrupulous guys in your shop that know how to screw you, and nothing you can do about it because you can't catch them. I don't know. It must have fallen off the truck. Sorry you lost that thing. I know it was a shop tool. It's awful. Who signed it out? I don't think anybody signed out anything for a year. What do you mean? We stopped signing things out. I don't know. We got busy. Get my drift? Moral character. So there isn't much different between the top and the bottom when you get right down to it. If the top operates anything different than these 4 values, and the 6th one, never lie, tell the customer the truth. And there are times that you're not going to tell the whole truth. Well, I had one of them, I told him the truth right flat out, and I knew I made a mistake. You know why? You don't. So 190 XT Alice Chalmers. Power director didn't work right. 2-speed hydraulic shift. I told him, I tear that apart. It's never going to work right. You have to make up your mind if you want the tractor now, as it is, because there's no going back. When I put this back together, it will never operate properly. And I was ordered to do something to try and make it work better. I said, I cannot. Well, do something. Well, I did. Made it worse. They had to have me do something. There's only one thing available to do, and it ended up making the situation worse. Well, it worked before. And while they were all standing there, and even the boss, I had to inform them, do I have to put it in writing on a big sign and put it in front of you? Once it's taken apart and it's junk, when I put it back together, it's worse junk. And finally the boss turned and looked at him and said, he did tell us that, didn't he? You got your tractor. Pay the bill and leave, please. And the customer, because somebody backed up the wrench, he paid his bill and left. No, what do I do? Either let us fix it or, well, it was a part once. We didn't do it. Exactly. No, you're going to have to make a choice in management whether you pull a stunt like that. Pull it apart, screw something up, put it back together, and then find out while it was apart, you probably could have fixed it better if you'd have taken time. But now you have to tear it apart again. And let me tell you, most companies will love to do that. It's not good, but that's what they love to do. So it goes back where, again, moral character. After moral character is communicating those situations. Because I was on the bottom and the boss took my cue, he communicated well to the customer in his language because somebody technical was talking to him. And then we had to record it. I'm going to take you to court. No, that's fine. We got the evidence all right here. You want us to take pictures too? And they handed him some of the parts in a box. Busted clutch plates. So there's a lot of stuff that can go on in management that can still go back to the first two and every time. So I expect you at the top to follow those 4 main principles. You have to. If you're going to hire somebody, that's also the 4 main principles you have to expect. What's the last one? The last one I think is the most important. That was kind of number 5 in there along with never lie to a customer. Show up. I'm talking about you up here and you here in the middle. Show up. Spend a day with the guy. Guys and service managers working and they're busting their butt. If he's unscrupulous, you're going to find out because you're spending time with him. You're going to see how the work orders are written up. Every so often, you're just going to go out, on a break and see how the guys are doing. Your management, you're taking a break. Go through the shop. See what's going on. Ask the guys what they need. Now, here's the funny part. Remember, you keep talking about moral values, not great, but good communication skills, technical acumen, right? Being able to write up and report, no, that's important. But the other part of it is when you're out in the shop talking to the guys, now you learn about their communication skills and their care and work for them in the shop, but also, even more important, you're going to find out what the shop itself needs. And when you take away that 8th factor I keep talking about, lose the bonus check. Now you can go through the shop and find out what they need, and I'll leave you with number 9. When you find out what the building needs for general maintenance, shop tools, etc., depending on the size of the shop, please take it on. And this is a recommendation because there's so many small satellite shops anymore. Unions getting tossed out and companies getting bought out, etc., etc., etc. Please take on the major expenses of tooling and buildings repairs and don't charge it against the local shop as much as you normally would, if at all. Well, now, wait a minute. There are certain corporate expenses that have to be corporate. And one of the things I have seen that has destroyed small branches in a company, especially down here with good customers, was poor middle management with no moral values, poor communication skills, and no technical acumen, having been in the field for 20 some years. And still, or I should say, having been in management for 20 years, still horrible skills. The last one is because they've been cheap, have not kept up on maintenance. Now all of a sudden there's this pile of bills there that the little branch in a lull can never pay for. And once they start getting behind, they never catch up because they can't. There's certain things have to be corporate expenses. And they rarely are. Special tools, you can't charge them against the shop. It's insane. And the other one is, if you want to get out from some of the other expenses, make sure that your mechanics are getting a good tool allowance. Last we got paid at Anderson was $475, and they thought that was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I laughed and looked at the one guy and said, "What have you been smoking?" When it was middle management. You wait a minute. $475 doesn't even buy a good impact. I'm not going to Harbor fake. You don't tell me what tools to buy. I know what I need on the road. You don't. And the guy sitting behind the desk telling you that you can just walk out there and order something in from the web or wherever, which often we do anyway. But you won't pay it unless it's an actual ticket. So I ordered it from Amazon. Let me tell you, there was a fight to get some tools paid off Amazon. I had to give up. Well, that's not a real tool, Bill. You didn't buy that off a tool truck or from Sears or Harbor Fake. And that's the incredulous looks I got. Usually 3 times in the same process. So don't tell us to go buy the cheap stuff. And if we do, and you're forcing us to, then honor it. So if you got a tool allowance for some of these guys that have been there, and I wouldn't throw it at them the first year, but some of it you could. If you got one that's a good employee, has done well by you, well, throw them a tool allowance or half a tool allowance or a pair of, well, you got to give them the boots anyway, steel toe or hard toe. Pay them. I mean, seriously. Or walk through and find out what they don't have and buy it for them. Well, that's what. You either put it on the company tool expense or something that small. Yeah, the branch can buy it for them. But you got to look out for your people, especially middle management. Upper management, well, guess what? If someone from Anderson Equipment is on here, I'm going to tell you a recommendation that's going to go all the way to the top. 2 things. One of them is keep Judy Anderson out of every branch humanly possible ever, because she doesn't have the decent demeanor to talk to anybody with communication, technical, or any other skill at all. She's too impatient and narcissistic. She's in her position to run numbers, and that's what she should do, is stay there and run numbers. Bill J., on the other hand, has the acumen to get out there and do anything, but he has the fear of lawsuits and such, and the fear of accountability. And when he gets past that, Mr. Bill, you need to drag yourself out of that chair and show up to every branch at least once a year. You heard me. Once a year, every branch. You're up to what, 24 now or something? 26? I forgot what it is. You bought a bunch of them up in there to New England. And there were some pretty good people up there too, but they felt like they got treated like crap. You need to get to every branch personally. Don't take pictures. Don't take anybody else's word for whatever else is going on. Why? Because you gave them a bonus check. And whatever they don't spend, that branch gets screwed on because it's middle management. He doesn't have to live with it every day. And that's what I say to every other company, because Anderson isn't the only. They just happen to be one of the extreme. Because they have 24 branches to screw from, essentially. Bill, you need to get out. Go visit people. Shake their hand. Get your hand dirty. Wear the wrong shoes for once. Yours are too clean. And your former branch manager, Tom Collins, actually did it once or twice. And it'd be worthwhile for you to get out there, especially when you have, well, we had it here in Endicott that none of the other branches seem to have, except possibly Olean. We had major floods in there, over 12 of them. One of them was 3 feet deep. I got a rotted lung from it. And Collins actually dragged his narcissistic little fanny down there and dressed in jeans and kickers and went to work. Once. If he can do it, Bill, you need to at least visit your places and find out what they have. Ask the guys to go through their truck. Yeah, you heard me, the service truck. Ask them to go through it. Get a hold of the service manager sometime and tell him, I'll help you with paperwork. No, you heard me. Help him with paperwork later. Or send your middle management guy down to help with paperwork. You can do that. You're the boss. I'm serious here, too. Because it sounds funny, and it is. Let me tell you, the guys in the bottom would love to hear that crap. Hey, dude, I was busy. You need to go help him with the paperwork because I pulled him out of the office. Make your middle managers do the same. Work like you. Walk through the shop. See it. And then you find out if your middle management isn't lying to you, like, unfortunately, in Bill J's case, he had some that were. I knew them personally. How do I know? One of them had to rewrite my yearly review 3 times. And we still sat there with a disagreement. He says, you're going to sign that? And I said, nope, that's a personal attack. I won't sign it. You can take it to Bill and tell him that. I think I ended up writing on there, I do not sign personal attacks. Well, that's going to get me in trouble. I said, Lord, I hope so. And that's another one you need to learn too, Bill. Get down out of there and find out who the people are underneath you. And I know it's not your personality type. But I also know, and this is a funny one for some of you, And I'm using Bill as an example for one main reason, because Bill has the acumen when he comes down off his high horse and actually talks to people one-on-one. He used to come to the individual branches for the yearly reports of how the company is doing. He came to ours twice. He did a good job. And we thought he was just an arrogant sot. And sad part of it was he couldn't come back anymore. Yeah, he's still an arrogant sot, but he took the time to actually speak. One of the things he said at one meeting was very important to all of us in the company, below middle management jackasses. He sat there and said, I have learned over the years one main thing. He says, when I talk to people, I have to explain things to my teenage kids. We're talking years ago. And he says, when I explain it to my kids, they seem to understand and follow through. So I guess I have to take the time to treat people here like my teenage kids, which was an arrogant, miserable way to put it. But at the same time, he wasn't wrong. Because the rest of us underneath it took it wrong, which I knew he was slamming everybody underneath him. But at the same time, it was also one that slammed the middle class management. And he was telling them, you're not getting my message down through the chain of command. But he didn't call them outright directly. That was important. So when it comes to that, that was one of a couple of things that Bill did that are not in his normal wheelhouse. So you people up in management that think you're too dang busy to come down to middle management, to come down below them to see what's going on the ground. Even Judy did that years ago. There were some big and major projects around Pittsburgh and other places where they were tearing down stadiums and buildings. And she'd show up on the job site for a photo op. Unfortunately, in one case, she spoke that we heard. Was not impressive. But for somebody from management to show up on the job site, talk about the equipment that they had, made a big difference. So that's what I'm saying. You need to be there. Feet on the ground. Things are big. You got 5 dozers going to a major quarry or major mine. Put your hat on, put your boots on, get your safety gear on, go on out and visit them. Say hello. That's my last word for management as it is. I know I picked on you. Bill, if you ever see this, I know I picked on you. But at the same time, I have experience in that from almost 13 years, 12 and a half years at your company up till 2017. And then you hired some people in middle management and finally the service manager. When you got to that last guy, that was the last straw. You hired him back for the third time, and he was more of a moron than he was the first time you hired him. So you need to change your hiring. And it goes back to this one, and this one. He failed on all 3 counts. And the only thing he did right was enter information into the computer. But by the time he got through these 3, it was skewed information. And there were more than once that because of those 4 failures, that shop came under scrutiny. And others in the system. So I see someone gave me a thumbs up but didn't want to hang around for 38 minutes. That's fine. But I wanted to get that through for management types that you understand and hear from an old guy's perspective that's been down through there. And the last I'll leave you with is this. No, there's a different list here. I know. The last I'll leave you, in each section here, segment. Follow me. The last one I wanted is, while you're saying, well, you don't. No, I had an employee, as I said before, once. And I was self-unemployed for, what was it? Wow. 11 years? Until I moved down here. Yeah. Well, what was? It was in a bad divorce with a person that decided moral values got in the way of her decisions. She couldn't communicate to anybody, so she didn't even bother to try. She had no technical acumen of any kind to even explain to you how to use a pair of scissors. And that's not a lie. So everything she recorded and explained to people was a lie. And after a while, I had to leave the county that her daddy was commissioner of juries in and had been county clerk. So I packed up and left and moved across state to get away from there. I was fortunate enough not to be there when it finally hit the fan. But up until that time, 2001, from 1990 to 2001, I was self-unemployed, so to speak. And it only took 2 weeks to come up with 12 customers because of 2 poor previous employers. Lie, cheating, and steal. Didn't have the moral character. They'd screw everybody that was around. They'd lie because they couldn't communicate properly and didn't want to communicate. They had no technical acumen. And they all thought they were geniuses. And when we got done, I said, "You're going down the road," that last guy said. "Okay." He said, "You're done and out of here, and I'm going to put the word out on you." And I said, "Cool. With your moral character?" I said, "Game on. You're not going to get another job around here." "I hope not, because if another clown like you hires me, there's going to be a war. And you'll think you've been in a war in here." "You don't." So what are you going to do? Fire me? Call the cops to throw me out? That's all you got now. You got nothing else. I can hold your last paycheck. Try it. He did. Didn't work. Tried to cut the unemployment. Didn't work. Why? Because he'd done the same thing to too many other people with too many other complaints prior to that. Moral character. In 11 years, I was making a good living. It was fun. Yep, had the one employee for a while and finally had to can him because I found out he was stealing from me. He kept coming in with, he was getting $150 a week that he wasn't supposed to get cash anyway. Then I found out he was also pocketing money from some of the work that was done. He'd bring in work when I wasn't directly around, do the work, take it back, put it in his car, take it back home and get paid for it. Sent him down the road too, so I know from whence you come. And remember, I'm tired now, and I'm retired, and still doing the same crap. Went out and worked on an excavator the other day, a little mini. I don't plan on getting anything too big, but at the same time, I just can't give it up. You're not talking to somebody that hates the job. Talking to somebody that loves his work, from chainsaws right on up, from little extruders for sealing membranes and freshwater fracking ponds, up through to 450 dozers to PC 750 excavators. You know, having PC 600s that we did some track work on here and there. D155 AX-5s and 6s that we did track work on. PC 360s, changed an engine in a 490, one of the first DPF systems that Komatsu sent into the United States. And they wanted to know how it affected the rest of the engine. Which turned out was zero. Didn't have any adverse effect on the engine at all. Let me tell you, that little, what was that one? I think it was the 11-liter engine. What do they call it? 125? Animal motor. Animal. Take care of it, 20,000 hours. What a beautiful engine. So we pulled that out, changed it, put another one in, sent it down the road. Worked on a lot of these things, and I really enjoyed them. But you lose the love for the game when you got to fight with people about honesty, communicating, and technical. I used to have to, every job used to require for me 3 service schools. First, and sometimes actually 4. First one was trying to tell the service manager before we left what I was going to run into, so he had an idea of my time schedule. Number 2, when I got there, was doing the troubleshooting and such and giving the customer the information he needed to know to make his decision. Sometimes her, but usually he. And the last one was I had to come back and advise the service manager A that I give him with the finalized information that I had originally given him up here. And then sometimes, because of Anderson's jackass middle management, I had to do that. So there were 3 to 4 service schools I had to give for every single job. Because people didn't know how to read. They could enter it in the computer, didn't matter anything to them. What's that go back to? Still goes back to the same one, moral character. If you don't have any, the world gets to be a rough place to live. See you later.